Vanished without warning, a true crime commute abduction in the U.S. The car was found before the woman was. It sat alone at the edge of a quiet gravel road, far from any homes, far from traffic. The engine was off, the doors were closed. Inside the car were her purse, her phone, and her camera. Nothing looked stolen, nothing looked rushed. It was as if the driver had stepped out for just a moment and never came back. This was not where she was supposed to be. She had finished her work hours earlier. She had told people where she was going. She had no reason to drive here, yet here her car was, abandoned miles from her normal route home. Law enforcement officers stood around it in silence, already knowing what this meant. When a woman vanishes but her car does not, the truth is usually dark. And the darkest part was still ahead. Because the man responsible was not a stranger to police, and he was closer than anyone realized. That night, as the searchlight swept over empty fields and wooded land, one question echoed louder than all others. How does someone vanish on the way home, without a sound, without a witness, without a trace? And more frightening still, what if this was not the first time the person responsible had done something like this? The answer was coming, but no one was ready for it. Hours earlier, the day had begun like any other. The young woman was in her mid-20s. She was responsible, hardworking, known for being reliable. That day, she had completed her last job assignment and headed out alone. She planned to return home, eat dinner, and prepare for the next workday. There were no signs of fear, no strange messages, no warning calls. She was simply driving home. Sometime during that drive, she crossed paths with someone who had been waiting for an opportunity. What happened next was fast and violent. Investigators later believed she was lured or trapped in a moment when she felt safe. There were no skid marks, no broken glass, no signs of a chase. This suggested control, not chaos. Someone knew how to take charge without drawing attention. Someone experienced. When she did not arrive home, concern began to grow. Friends tried calling her phone. It went unanswered. Her family assumed she might be delayed. But as the hours passed, worry turned into fear. This was not like her. By the next morning, she was officially missing. Police retraced her schedule. They confirmed her last known appointment. They mapped her normal route home. Nothing explained why her car was found so far away. The location suggested she had been taken somewhere against her will. Search teams were deployed. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers covered miles of land. Flyers appeared on doors and gas stations. News stations picked up the story. A woman had vanished on the way home, and America was watching. As the investigation deepened, detectives focused on people she had met that day. One name kept coming back. A man already known to law enforcement, a man with a violent past, a man who lived near where the car was found. This was not his first encounter with police. Years earlier, he had been arrested and questioned for aggressive behavior. He had been linked to disturbing incidents involving control and violence. Yet somehow he was still free, still moving among ordinary people, still capable of blending into daily life. When detectives searched his property, the case took a terrifying turn. Evidence connected him directly to her disappearance. What began as a missing person case was now a confirmed abduction and murder investigation. The truth was devastating. The woman had been attacked shortly after meeting him during her workday. She never made it home. Her life was taken in an act of sudden and brutal violence. Her body was hidden in a place no one would easily look. For days, the suspect denied everything, but the evidence did not lie. The discovery shattered her family. They had believed she would walk through the door again, that someone would find her alive. Instead, they were forced to face the reality that her final moments were spent in fear, taken by someone who should never have been free in the first place. The community demanded answers. How could someone with a history of violence be allowed back on the streets? How many warning signs had been missed? Could this crime have been prevented? The suspect was arrested, but closure was still far away.
because what investigators uncovered next raised an even darker question. If he had done this once, had he done it before? And how many others never made it home? As night fell on the town, candles were lit, roads fell silent. The place where her car was found became a symbol of loss, a reminder that danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly along the way home. And while one man sat in custody, another truth began to sink in. This was not just a story about one woman. It was a warning.
Because somewhere, right now, someone else was driving home, believing they were safe. And the road ahead was darker than they knew. The first break in the case did not come from a confession. It came from a pattern. Detectives began laying everything out on the table. The timeline, the locations, the short window between when the woman finished work and when her car was later found abandoned. That narrow gap told them something important. The abduction had happened quickly. This was not random wandering. It was targeted. She had crossed paths with her attacker during her normal routine. Investigators returned to every place she had visited that day. They reviewed schedules. They spoke to coworkers. They checked parking lots and nearby roads. Slowly, a clearer picture began to form. One stop stood out, a brief moment where she was alone, a moment when someone could approach her without raising alarm, and someone had. Witnesses remembered seeing a man nearby. He did not look out of place. He did not look rushed. That was what made him dangerous. He blended in. He watched. He waited. When police ran his name, alarms went off immediately. This man had a history. He had been arrested before. He had been questioned before. His past included violence and disturbing behavior. Not enough to keep him locked away forever, but enough that his name should have raised red flags long ago. Now those flags were impossible to ignore. Detectives brought him in for questioning. At first, he acted calm. He denied knowing the woman. He said he had never met her. He claimed he had been elsewhere. His voice did not shake. His story stayed simple, too simple. But lies leave cracks. Phone records placed him near her route. Surveillance cameras showed his vehicle moving in the same direction as hers. Timestamps matched too closely to be coincidence. The evidence was building piece by piece, tightening like a net. Still, he refused to admit anything. Behind closed doors, investigators prepared for the worst. They believed the woman was no longer alive. The focus shifted from rescue to recovery, from hope to truth. Search teams expanded their efforts. Fields were combed. Remote areas were examined inch by inch. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Every lead was followed, no matter how small. Then, in a place few people traveled, they found her. The discovery confirmed what everyone feared. She had been violently attacked. Her life was taken shortly after the abduction. The place where she was left showed signs of haste, not care. This was not someone who planned to be caught. This was someone who believed he would never face consequences. The case was no longer about finding her. It was about justice. As the news broke, the community was shaken to its core. People replayed their own daily routines in their minds. The drive home, the walk to the car, the moments they never thought twice about. Suddenly, nothing felt normal. Nothing felt safe. Vigils were held. Strangers stood together, holding candles, crying for a woman many had never met. Her face became known across the country, not because she wanted fame, but because her story reflected a fear shared by millions. She did everything right.
And it still was not enough. The suspect was arrested and charged, but even in custody, the story was not finished. Detectives began digging deeper into his past. What they found was deeply troubling. There were earlier reports, incidents that never led to charges, complaints that were brushed aside, moments where intervention could have changed everything. Had he been stopped earlier, she might still be alive. This realization haunted everyone involved. Prosecutors prepared their case carefully. They knew the public would demand answers. They also knew the defense would fight hard. The suspect still refused to take responsibility. He claimed evidence was misunderstood. He insisted he was being framed. But the truth does not disappear just because someone denies it. As the trial approached, one final detail surfaced, something the suspect had done after the crime. It showed planning, awareness, a chilling attempt to erase what he had done. This was not panic. This was calculation, the kind that suggested he had thought about these acts before. That detail changed everything. It raised a question that sent a cold wave through investigators and the public alike. Was this truly his first victim, or was this simply the first time he was caught? In court, the woman's family sat in silence, listening to every detail. They heard about her final moments. They heard about the choices made by the man who took her life. They heard about the missed warnings. And they waited for accountability, for answers, for the truth to finally be spoken out loud. But just when it seemed the case was reaching its end, something unexpected happened. The suspect made a move no one saw coming, and it threatened to change the outcome forever. The moment came without warning. Inside the courtroom, everyone expected another denial, another calm lie from the man accused of taking a woman's life. Instead, he asked to speak. His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. This was not confidence. This was pressure closing in. He knew the evidence was overwhelming. Cell phone data, vehicle movement, witness statements, forensic proof. The story he had built for himself was collapsing piece by piece. And for the first time since the night she vanished on her way home, the truth was about to surface. But not all of it. He admitted to being with her. He admitted to the encounter. He admitted to violence. Yet he still tried to control the narrative, twisting facts, minimizing his actions, avoiding full responsibility. Even now, he wanted power. The courtroom sat frozen as details were spoken aloud. Details no family should ever have to hear.
Her final moments were described in careful words, but the meaning was clear. She fought. She tried to survive. She did not give up easily. The room filled with quiet sobs as her family listened, holding on to one another as if letting go would cause them to fall apart. This was not just a crime. This was a life stolen on an ordinary drive home. When the verdict was read, there was no celebration, only silence. The man was found guilty. He would never walk free again. The judge handed down a sentence that ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For the public, it sounded like justice. For the family, it sounded like words that could never bring her back. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, cameras flashed, questions were asked. Was justice served? Could this have been prevented? Why was a repeat offender still free to harm again? No one had simple answers. As the case closed, another truth came into focus. This was not just about one woman and one attacker. It was about the system that failed to act sooner, about warnings that were ignored, about past behavior that should have stopped him long before that day. Investigators quietly reopened old files connected to the same man. They reviewed reports. They re-examined complaints. They spoke to people who had crossed his path before. Some stories sounded familiar, too familiar. Moments of fear, moments of control, moments that almost turned deadly. This raised a chilling question. How close had others come to the same fate? The woman's family chose to speak publicly. They talked about who she was beyond the headlines. They described her kindness, her sense of responsibility, her plans for the future. They reminded the world that she was more than a victim. She was someone who mattered. They also delivered a warning. They urged people to stay aware, to trust their instincts, to speak up when something feels wrong, not because fear should control life, but because silence can cost it. Their words reached millions, and they stayed there. Years passed, but the case did not fade.
Her name remained tied to conversations about safety and justice. Her story was shared in classrooms, documentaries, and community meetings, not for shock, but for awareness. The place where her car was found changed too. What was once just a quiet stretch of road became a reminder. People slowed down there. They remembered. They thought about how quickly normal life can turn into tragedy. And they asked themselves the same question: how does someone vanish on the way home? The man responsible sits alone now, locked away from the world he once moved through freely. He can no longer follow routines. He can no longer hide among ordinary people. His days are measured by walls and time. But even behind bars, the damage he caused remains.
One family lost a daughter. One community lost its sense of safety, and the country gained another painful lesson. Yet the story does not truly end there, because every day, across the United States, people finish work and start their drive home. They send final messages. They think about dinner, about rest, about tomorrow. They believe they will arrive safely. Most of the time, they do. But cases like this remind us that danger does not always come with noise or warning. Sometimes it waits quietly, watching for routine, waiting for a moment of trust. That is why this story still matters. That is why it must be told. Because remembering her is not just about the past, it is about protecting the future. And somewhere tonight, as headlights cut through the dark, another person is driving home, unaware of how fragile ordinary moments can be. The road looks familiar, the destination feels close, but the question remains: who is watching and who will make it home? The silence after the verdict was louder than any sentence. When the courtroom emptied and the cameras were turned off, the world moved on. News cycles changed, new stories replaced old ones, but for the family, time stopped on the day she vanished on the way home. They returned to a house that felt too quiet. Her room was untouched, her belongings sat where she left them. The space where her voice once filled the air now echoed with absence. Every ordinary sound became a reminder: a door closing, a phone ringing, a car passing by outside. She should have been there, but she was not. In the months that followed, investigators closed the final files. The case was officially solved. The man responsible would never be free again. On paper, the system had worked. In reality, the damage could not be undone. Law enforcement agencies quietly reviewed how the suspect had slipped through cracks for so long. Prior reports, missed chances, moments when stronger action might have changed the outcome. These reviews did not bring comfort, but they brought truth. This crime was not sudden. It was allowed to grow. The woman's story began appearing in training sessions for officers and community safety programs. Her case was used to teach patterns, to explain warning signs, to remind people that repeat offenders rarely start with their worst crime. They escalate, they test boundaries, they wait. Her name became part of that lesson, not because she chose it, but because her life had been taken by someone who should have been stopped earlier. Her family found strength in speaking out. They attended events, they shared her story, they talked about everyday safety without spreading fear. They reminded people that awareness saves lives, that listening matters, that patterns should never be ignored. They also spoke about forgiveness, not for the man who caused their pain, but for themselves. They refused to live trapped in anger. They chose to honor her by protecting others. It was not easy, but it was powerful. The road where her car was found remains quiet.
Drivers pass without knowing its history. Others slow down, remembering what happened there. No sign marks the spot. No memorial stands nearby. And yet, the place carries weight. It is a reminder that danger does not always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks normal.
Sometimes it looks familiar. Sometimes it looks like the end of a long workday and the promise of home. Across the United States, cases like this continue to shape how people think about safety. Employers change policies. Agencies share information more carefully. Communities become more alert to repeat behavior. These changes come too late for her, but they may come in time for someone else. Her story is not just about abduction. It is about trust. It is about routine. It is about how quickly ordinary life can break apart. She did not take risks. She did not ignore warnings. She simply believed she would make it home. And that belief cost her everything. Today, her name is spoken with respect, not as a statistic, not as a headline, but as a person who mattered. Someone whose life changed the way others see the world. Someone whose story still protects strangers she will never meet. And so, this story ends where it began, on the road home, where headlights stretch into the dark, where people think about dinner, rest, and tomorrow, where most arrive safely, and where one woman did not. Her disappearance was sudden, her loss was permanent, but her story remains, a warning, a lesson, and a promise that she will not be forgotten. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime documentary.